Hello everybody and welcome back to the second shelf and to another Books Weekly, my Sunday video in which I discuss books that I've either finished from a previous week or read last week or started last week. And the first book is the book that I didn't finish from last week, and that is The Lonely City by Olivia Laing. I started this book, as you know, if you watch my channel, last week in the weekend, and I wanted to read it, obviously, because I liked the beginning. And then I was traveling, I was visiting my mom for her birthday, and stupid me, I didn't bring the book, so I couldn't read it, and I couldn't finish it. I will do that this week, and I'll keep you updated. Fortunately, I at least didn't forget to bring my Kindle when I was traveling last week. So instead of finishing The Lonely City, I read two books, both of which I mentioned in my video April TBR, April to be released. So they're both new releases from April. And the first book is Paula Cocozza's How to be Human. Paula Cocozza is a feature writer for The Guardian. She's a British author. If you're interested, I'll leave a link to her Guardian site down in the description box. And How to be Human, as I said, published in April, is her first book. The book's main character is Mary. The book opens when Mary comes home one night from a dinner and finds a baby on her doorstep. That is quite strange. Then the book switches to 3 weeks earlier, when it all started, as Mary says. We are in Mary's head. Although the book is in third person, but we are in Mary's head the whole time. Through the course of the novel, when we go back 3 weeks, we learn that there is something off with Mary. She's living alone after a separation from her husband, but her husband Mark is stalking her. It seems quite an unhealthy relationship between the two, and we also learn about the neighboring couple, Michelle and Eric, who just had a baby, and it seems that Michelle is off as well, suffering from postnatal depression. And the baby, we learn, that Mary found in the beginning of the book is the baby of Michelle and Eric. So the book is a quiet, subtle account of Mary's unraveling mind in a way. There is this fox in the garden which Mary befriends. She starts to sleep in the garden. She starts to feed the fox. And then we go back to the beginning with the baby. We don't quite know whether the baby was left there by the fox, as Mary thinks, or whether Michelle, in her depression, left the baby at Mary's doorstep. So I don't know, I'm probably not explaining it very well, but it's a book about an unraveling mind and about, the wild, because the fox as the wild, the symbol for the wild animal, for the wildlife. That's at least my interpretation, who is helping, quote unquote, Mary to find her way. I liked the book. I wasn't over the moon by it. I think Paula Cocozza is certainly a writer to watch in the future. I thought the way she was in Mary's head and she described Mary's life was really very well done. Just the magical realism part about the fox and the wild, it's just not 100% my cup of tea, but that's just me. So I think it's worth, the book is certainly worth checking out if you're interested in that kind of story. And for my part, I liked it, and I will look and see what Paula Cocozza is publishing next. And the second book I then read from my Kindle, was also an April release, as I said, and it's also a debut novel, and that is M.L. Rio, If We Were Villains. Like I said in my April TBR video, this is a very difficult title for non-English speakers to pronounce. ML Rio is a British writer. Also, she was an actress before she was before she became an author. She has a degree from King's College in London on Shakespearean studies, and the book is heavily Shakespearean, and that's what I thought was interesting when I looked at it to be read as a new release in April. The book centers around a group of 7 four-year students in a very elite fine arts college, an invented fine arts college. The main character from whose point of view we see the story is Oliver, one of the four-year students, and the book opens when Oliver is released from prison after 10 years, and he is met by a police inspector who put Oliver in prison 10 years ago. We don't quite know in the beginning why Oliver was imprisoned. It had to be something serious because 10 years is obviously not, petty theft. But we don't know what happened. What we do know in the beginning when the police inspector and Oliver talk is that the police inspector obviously thinks that what Oliver told the police and the reason why he was put in prison is not the truth. And the police inspector wants to know the truth. So the book is set as an alternating story. We have the now, after the release, Oliver's release from prison, when he talks to the police inspector, telling him the truth. And the other alternating chapters are 10 years earlier, when we see what really happened. The group of the 7 students perform Shakespeare plays. There's something happened to one of them, and that something, we learn later on, leads to Oliver being arrested and put in prison for 10 years. First, what I want to say about the book is, if you are not familiar with Shakespeare plays, then you might not enjoy the book that much, because the Shakespearean element, as I said in the beginning, is a big part of the book. First of all, because there are a lot of citations of Shakespeare texts. And second, because there's a lot of reference to Shakespeare plays and personas. So if you don't know when you read the book who Banquo is or who Edmund is and which play they are referring to, that makes it difficult to understand the significance. And also, if you don't enjoy reading long passages of Shakespeare text, because there's, dialogue, Shakespearean dialogue in the book, then you probably also won't enjoy the book that much. I read the book twice because it was so muddled in my mind what I think about it, that I had to reread it right after I finished it, especially because I saw so much praise for the book on Goodreads. And I didn't like it that much. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars after the second read. And I tried to pinpoint why I couldn't relate to all the 5-star reviews that I saw on Goodreads. The premise was interesting. Young people becoming actors, and the book explores the question how much of the acting you take with you when you're off stage. So you lose yourself, as it were, and that you become the persona that you play on stage. We have, in the group of 7, we have the obvious hero who always plays the main male character, that's Richard. We have, the female heroine, we have the sidekicks, we have the good guys, we have the villains. And I thought that was an interesting premise, how that works when you act, whether you play the hero because in real life you are also a hero, or whether you take something from stage into your life off stage. But big buts. What I thought was really poorly executed was firstly that the characters did things that I thought didn't make sense at all as a character, and they had to do it because the author needed them to do it for plot reasons. And I always think that's really bad. If the character does stuff that is just not believable, just because you see the author obviously needs them to do it, because otherwise she can't move the plot forward. So that was one problem. The second problem is related to that the whole premise and the plot centers around the fact that tensions in the group of the 7 people rise and power relations shift, and that's what leads to the events and Oliver's incarceration. But there was no arc in order to make it believable that the tensions were rising. The book opens and then all of a sudden tensions are high. And obviously the author felt that because she explains to us that, for instance, the power shifted. And in a good book, that is not necessary. You don't need the author to explain to you what just happened. You see it happening and you interpret it by yourself. So that was my second big problem with the book. The third problem I had was also plot related, because we actually have 2 plot arcs. The first one is the plot when we learn in the first half of the book what happened in the group. Obviously something happened to one of the people in the group, and that is normally that would be sufficient, for a plot arc. It starts and then something happens, and then that's the main focus, the high point, and then we have the ending. But there is a second plot arc right after that, because the book doesn't end with something happening to one of the 7 people. The second plot arc is then why Oliver ended up in prison. And that felt like, you are sort of breathless as a reader from that first high point until the end, when you finally learn what happened. And that was, I don't know, from a structural point of view, I thought that was not very well done, because you can't keep the tension from a plot point of view that high all the time. So it has a very steep arc in the beginning, then something happens, and then you stay up and up and up and up until the end, and there's a final twist in the end, sort of the final plot twist in the end, which was good. That was one of the better things. But the whole second part of the book, when we learn why Oliver ended up in prison, was just from a plot point of view, I don't know, not very well executed structurally. And the last point related to that second plot arc was that we learn the reasons, but I don't know, it's just not believable. Probably, at least for me, it was not believable. Probably because without giving spoilers, the reason why Oliver ended up in prison had something to do with his relation to one of the 7 people. And that relationship, that is the center of the second plot line, was just not well done. We never really understood, at least I never really understood, how that personal relationship between Oliver and one of the other main characters developed, and what was at the center of it. So like I said, in the end, after 2 readings, I gave it 2.5 stars, which doesn't mean it is a bad book overall, but it has some really good stuff in there, and there's really good writing in there, but the execution of the plot and the character development just didn't convince me. That was a long, rambling, waffling attempt on reviewing Rio's book. Sorry about that. So I will keep the rest brief. Just very quickly, the book that I will read or start to read this weekend, and that's Dorthe Nors, Mirror, Shoulder, Signal. That's Dorthe Nors is a Danish author. The book has been translated from the Danish by Misha Hoekstra. It is longlisted for the Man Booker International Prize, and I want to read it because so many people were baffled that this book was on the shortlist. It's about a 40-year-old woman who learns to drive, hence Mirror, Shoulder, Signal. I don't know much more than that, but I was just intrigued by the surprise of so many reviewers on BookTube that this book was on the shortlist, and so I want to see for myself. That's just how I am. Anyway, so this was it for a long, rambly Books Weekly. I hope you enjoyed it nevertheless. Thank you very much for watching. Talk to me in the comments if you want to, as always, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye.